Hello and welcome to Conversations With, our monthly series of informal and enlightening conversations between the leading edge teacher and author, Jim Self, and some of today's most progressive and connected teachers, channels, and authors. Now, here's our host, Jim Self.
Barbara, welcome. Very, very nice to be here with you again.
Hi, Jim. It's great to be with you.
You know, I made a funny comment before we were on the air. We were talking about a number of these aspects of what we're going through, and I found in my reality, particularly, I don't get here very often, but in the last 2-3 weeks, I've really been going nonstop, redesigning Mastering Alchemy, redesigning a biomedical corporation that I'm the chairman of the board of, and just no break in my space. And one of the things that I'm very aware of is I don't lose my space very often. But when in this period of time, getting a little bit stressed, getting a little bit tired, I'm becoming very aware of this awakening that's occurring in the collective consciousness as we go into 2013. And there's both a lot of potential, but there's a lot of unconscious awakening that's occurring, and I was finding a lot of that just on the edge of my space continuously, and this is something we've talked about. How are you seeing this 2013 period of time unfolding in terms of people waking up?
Well, actually, I'm working more with being in the now in the sense that I really do think that Kalaman called the calendar date correctly. And the reason I'm convinced that he was right about the Mayan calendar actually ending at the end of October last year is mainly based on what's been going on during 2012. And so I think we're already in it at this point. And what I recall about it was that in the last month of 2011 and then for the first maybe 3 or 4 months in 2012, I just felt like I'd gotten knocked over the head by something. I found myself being extremely disoriented and confused and not having much of a sense of direction. And then suddenly around May, I can't remember this exactly now, but somewhere around May or June, all of a sudden this incredible creativity started occurring, synchronicities between things and signs coming in through events and through numbers and through things that people said to me and stuff like that. And so starting around May or June, I decided that I just made a decision. I decided what I would do is that I would simply observe my reality, and whenever anything came into it, I would look for what was positive and go in the positive direction and ignore anything that was negative. And so I started that as a practice starting, in the early summer this year. And my reality has become so creative and so magical that I almost can't believe it. The creativity and magical qualities have increased all the way through the summer, and they're still increasing at this moment. So I actually think that we're in the middle of something that actually started just about a year ago, if you can kind of resonate with that. I think 2013 is just going to be the same kind of amped up creativity and continuing from that moment forward. I really do feel that reality has completely opened. And now, according to the Pleiadians, what would happen at the end of the Mayan calendar, and back in those days when the book first came into me, I used to think 2012 was the end of the calendar too, and then of course I tweaked it with Kalaman's research. But what they said in 1995 was they said that all 9 dimensions of consciousness would be fully open in 2012. And that's what I think is going on, Jim. I think that all these different potential creative aspects of each one of those dimensions is becoming extremely available to us now. And I think it's extremely confusing for a lot of people. I think it's exhausting. I think you sometimes find yourself like almost out on the edge. You're on the edge of a wall and you don't know where to turn, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
And I think there's just so many things that we could talk about with this, because the closest thing that I've experienced to this year before this year was the way reality used to be after I'd gone through some kind of a big initiation, maybe with an indigenous initiation of some sort. And when I first would really open up to a new level of myself, it was like it's been this year. But as far as I can tell, we're all in the middle of this initiation together now.
I think that there is kind of this dawning happening. There's an awakening as people watch things like these housing bubbles destroy the economy as it did in 2008. And many of these lack of decision-making experiences in this old manner of decision-making, just simply stalling out, and the consequences being really enormous if a wise decision is not made. I think people are beginning to discern the go along and get up and hurry up and go to work mentality, and beginning to say something clearly is not correct here. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you, and I think you're going to find in these next coming years, and I'm very hopeful it's going to start with mothers and it's going to start with women, not to minimize men at all, but that aspect of that, maybe that motherly sense of not survival, but of well-being for the young ones. That sense of motherliness, if I could, is going to wake up in everybody, and people are just going to say, enough. This doesn't make sense. They may have different color skin and believe differently, but they are me and I am them. And I think that vibration is beginning to take root. It's always been there, but I think it's beginning to be conscious. And
this is a very Pleiadian idea.
Yeah.
The issue of the Pleiadians say point blank, the only point of anybody's life on the planet is to care for the children. They just start there, and they have all kinds of profound grandmother teachings and all that sort of stuff. But I'd also like to make a comment about the men. The most profound evolutionary change that I think has happened in the history of this planet, in a way, happened during my lifetime. And I had 4 children, and the youngest one's 34, so this was a long time ago. And when I had my children, I held the infant, and I held the baby, and I did all of those kinds of things. And then suddenly, around 10 or 15 years ago, the men started holding the infants.
Yeah.
And the men started caring for the tiny babies. And this is a huge evolutionary shift, Jim, in terms of how it works on this planet, to have the shift be into the men mothering. And the next thing I noticed about it is if you watch them, the babies tend to be calmer with the father.
Interesting.
Do you notice this?
Well,
Yeah. You notice you're not as disturbed as much by screaming babies as we were in the past, because for some strange reason the father is able to calm the child down more easily, and I can't imagine what it is. First of all, it could just be because women are so stressed by birthing and all the things they have to go through in order to bring in a child. So I do think that this mothering energy is starting to emerge within the men as much or possibly more so than from within the women, which really fascinates me.
I think you're getting to see people starting in where we've been talking so far, when they start to just pause, to take that breath and say, something's not right about this. The ability and the depth they have to reach into to come up with great brilliance is very, very available, and yet they've never done it before or seldomly had a glimpse of it. But I think you're going to see within each one of us these potentials and these possibilities in the most remarkable ways are going to be dug down deep and pulled up. And this is just what I see in these waves of energetics and shifting and of these platforms, and I would call them in a way that we live on. We're just simply stepping into, I don't know whether I'd call it a new dimension, I would, but I would also call it glimpses of possibilities that when you follow the yellow brick road and you trust, as you said earlier, you wind up in a place that was, one, not anticipated to arrive in, and secondly, thrilled by the journey and the location where you now are. And I think there's going to be so much of that unfolding in these next 3 years particularly.
Yeah, and then to get a little bit specific as far as the astrology is concerned, because it's useful stuff. Pluto rules the deepest level of change. It rules going into the deep underworld and transforming at the root of everything. That's just the basic Plutonic archetype. And then you have to deal with the sign. Pluto is in Capricorn, and Capricorn rules formation and structural change. So that's where Pluto's at. Then Uranus is in Aries. Now, the planet Uranus is the planet of transformation and revolution. So in case anybody thinks that the Arab Spring is going away, you might as well forget about it. In fact, you could even see some revolutionary levels of change right in the United States, as a matter of fact. Because when Uranus is in Aries, and it happens every 84 years. Last time it happened was about 1929 through about 1935, right during the Great Depression. And when Uranus is in Aries, Uranus impulses people to just simply change. They just stop thinking and they just start doing it and changing it. So the basic process that's working itself out here is this revolutionary level of change through each individual that then transforms the structures so that they can shift at the deepest possible level. And that's the kind of astrological influence that we're having. And again, by the way, Jim, this is about this particular transit. Normally, when it occurs, you only have 3 squares or maybe 5, but we have 7 of them. And I went back a couple of thousand years with my computer to see if I could find another period where there were 7. So this is really, really something,
Yeah.
And the question is, what does each one of us do as an individual? That's always the most important question. And people are feeling that deep, deep movement into change and transformation. And the point is allow yourself to act. That's the trick with this thing right now, because you just got to keep acting, changing, moving, and going for it. And the possibilities are unbelievable.
Yeah, and one of the requirements is to stay in present time, and now that you just acted, observe again where you are and what the next action is required. I get a lot of my students. It's a fascinating thing. We provide lots of tools and lots of choices and lots of very significant shift that's definable and understandable and recognizable, and yet they'll get another piece of information, and the next question is, well, what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
And the whole essence of all this work is you're the one who's ascending. You're the one who's evolving. What would you like to do now? And it's a fascinating thing, because the shift from what should I do to what I would like to do is not conscious yet. Mm-hmm. It's beginning to be conscious. It's beginning to be a choice. But for many people, it's still looking somewhat outside of themselves for a guidance as to what the next step is. And many others, they're starting to say, I can do this. And it's as if they don't, which is wonderful, they don't remember that just a minute ago they were asking, what should I do? Mm-hmm. And now they're saying, this is what I will do. And it's one of the most wonderful things in all the work that I do is to watch somebody find that shift and then not remember who they were a minute ago and get on with the evolution, the tremendous flowering of their life. And I'm watching it in many, many people, and it's the reward of what I do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the question would be for somebody listening to the show, what really are they experiencing? Like in my case, I really felt I didn't feel personally stuck in this lifetime. I've had a wonderful lifetime, and I've had an amazing level of freedom and the ability to do what I need to do. But most of the people around me have been very, very, very stuck. And what I've been experiencing during this last year is that people don't seem to be stuck at this point. Are you seeing this?
I'm seeing that choice to be not stuck. I'm still seeing some of them stuck, but they're beginning to realize I have a choice and I don't have to be stuck. And that's the piece that I agree with you is really beginning to flower and unfold.
Because, things just really did feel stuck. Everything felt like it was just on a treadmill, at least to me, through 2011. That may be the question.
Yes.
Is what is this calendar all about, And as far as I can see, this calendar is all about the ending of everybody being stuck.
Yes, yeah.
Stuck on the earth, etc.
Yeah, and it's the thing is that's too simple. When you're stuck, that answer is too simple. And yet, as everybody begins to wake up or choose, it is the easiest, simplest of all the answers to basically live. And I think you're right. People are becoming unstuck. Very exciting.
And even if somebody's listening right now who feels totally stuck, you may be noticing that people around you aren't as stuck. And so the other thing that I've been noticing is things are really starting to get moving now, because if you've got 5 people who are kind of connected to each other, 3 or 4 of them are really going for it, and then the other person finds that they can move with it too. In other words, it's the field itself that had us stuck. I don't know whether it was the global elite, whether it was the influence of the calendar. I don't know what it was that had people like stuck in a treadmill, but they're not anymore. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons things are kind of chaotic, by the way. I mean, let's not make this all sound like some kind of perfect reality, because as people get moving, a lot of people don't even know what to do. They don't know how to do things,
I do. And what I know is when you begin to experience freedom after you've been stuck, that's the reaction many times is scary, and I don't know what to do. And I think that's a normal reaction coming out of a third dimension, fourth dimensional type of controlled environment. But I'm also beginning, and this is where you're saying, 5 people together, 3 of them are getting it, the other 2 begin to go, I can do it too. It's a very sequentially stepped unfolding that we're in, and I agree with you. I think there's a lot of potential choices here that people are waking up to, and again, it's like that dawning of the day. I can't quite see far enough into what's in front of me, but I'm starting to recognize that the tree that I'm seeing is the monster of yesterday, and it's really quite a lovely tree after all. Mm-hmm. I think that's what this 2013, 14, 15 is going to be bringing, I think, is actually a lot of freedom. But how do you choose is really the question that each of us hold.
Yeah, and then another thing that happens in an environment like this is that you may be put into a position of changing and having more freedom because something negative happens to you. See, got to watch out here, because all kinds of really negative things are happening. But negative things create change as well as positive things. So something might happen to your house or whatever, and it's negative. But on the other hand, what's happening is energy is being freed up to move. And that's one of the reasons that the hurricane was so striking to me, because I used to live in the eastern United States and have a lot of friends and relatives back there. And it would be fair to say that people living in the eastern seaboard have a tendency to be a little bit more rigid than, say, people in California. And I don't want it to sound like any kind of judgment or anything like that, but you're more likely to find a bunch of people in the eastern seaboard who have lived in the same neighborhood and in the same house for 40 years than you are than you are, say, in California or Oregon. It's just kind of the way it is. And so it's a part of the country that maybe needed a jolt like this in a way to start to wake up and realize that reality can be different. That even if you do lose your home, or even if you do lose, all your photographs or something like that, then your reality becomes a new reality. And so I just want to put it in there that some of the change, probably 50% of the change that we're experiencing right now, is coming from negative things instead of positive things.
Yeah, it's very, 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 I agree with you 100%. And sometimes you have an expectation that this is going to turn out to be a great step, and it's either neutral or not necessarily the greatest step, but you had to take that step to make the next one that is great available.
If you enjoyed this highlight from Conversations With, join Jim Self live on the Awakening Zone Network. That's awakeningzone.com. If you're looking for free tools for your personal and spiritual growth, if you want to be who you came here to be, visit masteringalchemy.com, where you can learn more about Jim, his work, and future guests. Our theme song is Hands of Love by Barry Goldstein. May you experience laughter and grace on your journey home.